Thomas sorted through papers in his office. Everything irritated him. The weather outside was miserable, damp and chilly. And the profits for this month had dwindled even further. He couldn't understand what was going wrong. His restaurant was located right in the city center, always bustling with customers, established for years. So what was the issue? He opened the door. Lolita. Lolita was a young woman who had been acting as the manager for almost 3 months now. Acting, not really being one. Thomas suspected it was probably her doing, but he couldn't confront her because she had been appointed to the position precisely for being his lover. He had placed her there with a specific purpose. Lolita was supposed to be his eyes and ears. Despite her being hopelessly foolish, she managed her role excellently. She knew everything about the staff, who drank an extra cup of tea, who was up to what. Sometimes Lolita even eavesdropped on conversations among clients that interested him. It was always good to know things about wealthy people that others didn't. "Yes, Thomas, did you call for me?" She approached him and nearly pressed against him, but he gave her a stern look. One condition of their affair was that no one at work knew anything about it. "After closing today, no one leaves. There will be a meeting," he said. Lolita flashed offended eyes and replied, "Fine, I'll make sure everyone stays." "No, Lolita, not make sure, make them stay," he corrected her. The girl pouted and gracefully walked into the hall. Thomas even licked his dry lips. Lolita's legs started around her ears, and her skirt ended about the same place. When the restaurant closed, the owner entered the hall. "So, I gathered you today to understand, to find out why profits are falling." One of the waitresses, a young girl with a strange name, Carmen, said, "What's there to wonder about? Just from my tables alone today, there were 7 returns." Other waiters also grumbled. "We're tired of serving whatever you give us, and we have to listen." Thomas looked at Lolita. She stood a little to the side, carefully inspecting her nails. "It's very interesting why the owner doesn't know anything about returns." He turned to the chef. "Victor, what's going on?" A very imposing man jumped up. "What's going on?" "But I wanted to ask you about it. How can meatballs be tasty that dogs won't eat, and cutlets? Have you ever heard of making cutlets from frozen meat? Victor, you know perfectly well how expensive groceries have become. To stay afloat and pay all of you wages, we have to find something cheaper. But it's the chef's job to cook with what we have. What's the problem here?" Everyone was talking. And waiters, and cooks, and even the cleaners shouted that she had to carry rags from home because Thomas didn't care about anything. He listened to all this for 10 minutes, finally he was tired. "Well, okay, so I'm bad at everything, and why?" "Apparently because I turn a blind eye to what you're doing. Take, for example, Carmen. Tell me, why do you take cutlets and other meat products out of the restaurant? Do you know it's a matter for the police?" "Me? Yes, I'm waste, return. You'll throw it away anyway, and near my house is a dog shelter, they add it to porridge. It doesn't matter, you take someone else's." Or, "Victor, just a few days ago you fed some Semite beggars in my restaurant, and for free. So where should the profit come from? You are all brazenly robbing me. This month I will deduct from everyone for your mistakes, so don't whine about your salary. And if the situation doesn't improve, I will continue to deduct." People started talking in outrage, but Thomas had already moved to the exit. Everything was boiling inside him. He gave them jobs, salaries. And they act like this? Well, nothing. He will come up with something so that life doesn't seem so sweet. They've talked enough. He was never married. At 40, he had neither family nor children. Only such Lolitas replaced each other from time to time. Yes, he had status, and there was a need to go to receptions not alone, but with someone. Young, beautiful girls who accompanied him always aroused envy among his business colleagues. Thomas poured himself a brandy, sat in his chair. Here he was successful, not scary, everything was with him, but there was no happiness. He didn't like these empty evenings because they allowed all sorts of thoughts to creep into his mind. Once upon a time, he had loved a beautiful girl, but his love for money had prevailed. He simply betrayed her, did something no one should ever do. She trusted him, loved him. The man shook his head, no, this won't do, he needed something to occupy himself. He picked up his phone and called his longtime friend, who owned a large hotel in the city. They agreed to meet at the nearest bar and have a good time there. 30 minutes later, Thomas was already placing an order. 5 minutes after that, Carlos showed up. He didn't look his best. They hadn't seen each other in a long time, so Thomas asked, "Carlos, you look a bit roughed up, are you sick or something?" Carlos waved his hand. "Nah, am I sick? Laura filed for divorce." Thomas gasped. "What? But she... You two had such love." "What love? It's still there. It's me, the idiot, I messed it all up. I got a new secretary, all cute and everything, you know, like from a magazine cover. She flirted, and I couldn't resist. Thought it'd be just once. But this idiot shows up at my wife's, saying let Carlos go, we're in love. Can you believe it?" Thomas looked at his friend. He wanted to say, how could you be such a bastard? They all knew his wife. A beautiful woman who gave Carlos a son and a daughter. Not only was she beautiful and smart, but also a wonderful housekeeper. They all loved visiting his home because you couldn't get such treats in any restaurant. Their daughter was studying in school, all top grades, and their son was still in daycare but already had numerous awards in some sport. And there was love in the family, which drew guests to their home. Maybe Thomas would never stop, you know Laura. He asked for forgiveness. Ask, almost on his knees, but she doesn't want to hear me out. And don't scare her with anything, her business is separate. Well, what can I say? Let's hope for the best. Thank you, friend. They drank, then more. Carlos seemed to relax a bit. Well, what about you? What's happened? Listen, everything's getting out of hand at the restaurant. I say one thing, they give me 10 back. Profits are dropping, and this Lolita won't let up. Carlos looked thoughtfully at Thomas. You need a break, go somewhere. With Lolita. Although it's better alone. I'd gladly go. But leaving the restaurant to someone else, especially in the state it's in now. Without a firm hand, they'll kick me out fast. I think I can help you. Thomas smiled. How? You take the reins while I relax. No. I have contacts with someone. She's, how should I put it, like a person who pulls everyone out of a crisis. She's got some serious education, and in a short time, she can turn the least profitable place into a profitable one. No way, people like that don't exist. They sure do. True, she doesn't come cheap, but the result is 100%. Listen, it sounds promising. Let's do this, I'll give you her number, you arrange a meeting, and then when you tell me how it went, I'll fill you in on the rest. Anything else? Well, I wouldn't want to discuss that right now. You're intriguing me. Thomas took the phone number, carefully wrote down the name, Elvira, and promised to meet with her tomorrow. They had a good time with Carlos. He went to apologize to his wife, and Thomas went home to sleep. The next day was so bad that he even closed the curtains in his office, called Lolita to come in. She entered, stopped demonstratively far from him. "Well, Lolita, little fish, don't sulk, urgent matters came up." Lolita stayed silent. "I've arranged a meeting. If everything goes well today, I'll take you to the sea." Lolita looked at him incredulously, then squealed and rushed to him. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. "That's it, run, probably our savior." Lolita let the visitor in and slipped out of the office. They talked quickly, the woman promptly answered any questions, and Thomas was convinced that her expertise far surpassed his. It seemed like she knew everything about business, but at the same time, she was very strict and professional. Several times, Thomas felt like he vaguely recognized the woman's face, but his head was pounding, and his gaze wouldn't focus. He promised to call back, and the woman left. Thomas noted her impeccable pantsuit, high heels, and perfect figure. He immediately dialed Carlos's number. Judging by his voice, Carlos was in even worse shape. "Carlos, where did you find this miracle?" "I felt like a student at an exam." Carlos chuckled. "You're not alone. Remember last year when they tried to take over my hotel? Only Elvira came to the rescue." "No way, that's just a godsend. By the way, I've already booked our vacation." "Hold on, you're not sleeping. What's up?" "Elvira?" "Well, she was sitting there, and her term was quite hefty. Basically, she's an ex-con." Thomas was speechless. "What do you mean?" "That's. But I assure you, she can turn any business around from ruins. Of course, it's all unofficial. I trust her like I trust myself." Thomas didn't think long. He didn't care how she would re-educate his staff, and if she succeeded, he didn't care at all about her past. Workers, let them taste the joy of change. Thomas stepped out into the hall. There weren't many people. He waved his hand, calling the staff over. "So, starting tomorrow, Lolita and I will be on vacation. The new manager will be in charge of you. You'll do everything she says. And you better not disobey her even once. This lady has a very criminal past." He saw the puzzled looks from the employees and simply reveled in it. Immediately, he called Elvira back, explained that she could start from tomorrow. He would leave all necessary documents and papers on the desk in the office. Early the next morning, he and Lolita flew off to warmer climes. 3 weeks passed like a single day. Thomas occasionally called Elvira. She reported, and he understood that if everything was as she said, then things at his restaurant were indeed turning around. No one bothered him anymore because he had bought a completely new SIM card for his vacation. In the evening, he called Elvira and warned her that he would arrive tomorrow. "Okay, Thomas, I'll be waiting for you." Yesterday he proposed to Lolita, and she gladly accepted. Yes, she's silly, but beautiful, and fiery in bed. What else does he need? At least he won't be alone. And on the last night before returning, his ex appeared in his dream. She hadn't appeared in his dreams for years, and suddenly there she was. She laughed and beckoned him somewhere. He followed her stupidly smiling, and then he ran, but she kept calling him, and then disappeared, right on the edge of the cliff. He couldn't resist and fell down, woke up from his own scream. Lolita was asleep. He stepped out onto the balcony. Many years ago, he and Eva met in a major restaurant in a very big city. She was the manager, and he was hired as her assistant. Love between them ignited immediately, like fire, like an explosion. They dated for 3 months and already decided to get married. But then a great opportunity came to make a big profit from the restaurant while the owner was on vacation. It could have gone unnoticed, but for some reason it didn't. He had two options: return the money and lose the job, or not return it and start his own business, become successful. But he would have to answer to Eva for the money. He chose the second. He had no idea what happened next. He went abroad, studied restaurant business for a year, and when he returned, he changed his name and opened his own restaurant. Thomas and Lolita, glowing with tan, got out of the taxi. Oddly, the restaurant parking lot was completely empty. Even silly Lolita understood that something was wrong. Thomas's heart clenched unpleasantly. He quickly headed to the restaurant. Inside, it was empty, with Elvira sitting at a table in the middle of the hall. She sipped wine from a glass and smirked at him. "Hello, Thomas." He recoiled as if struck, and Elvira removed her glasses. Thomas went cold. "Eva. You recognized me. And here I thought I'd have to introduce myself. Well, come in, don't be shy. How about some wine? What's going on? Where is everyone? Where are the customers?" "Oh, there are no customers because there's no one to feed them. I made a real effort to find good jobs for each of your employees." "Are you out of your mind? You'll answer to me." "Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm answering. All 6 years I spent behind bars, this is all I did. I imagined this very moment." Thomas sank into a chair. Lolita stared at Elvira in horror. Elvira pushed a stack of papers toward Thomas. "Here you go, darling, this is a gift from me, you could call it payback. These are bills for penalties. Your restaurant undertook to organize 2 weddings for very influential people of this city, but failed. As you understand, you're facing a hefty sum of money. This here is the decision to close your restaurant for unsanitary conditions. This one's from the fire department. Well, in short, you can read it all yourself. You'll have plenty of time now, almost like I did back in my day." Elvira got up, headed for the exit, and stopped near Lolita. "Run, girl. When this man has no money, he can betray anyone, even someone very close." Elvira stepped outside and took a deep breath.